Let us now discuss part 2 of the poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Before watching this video, I suggest you to watch the first part of this poem so you will better understand this poem. Now, in part 1, you have seen that how an ancient mariner stops a man who is on his way to a wedding. The wedding guest is eager to go to the feast, but the ancient mariner holds him with his skinny hand, as the line is used, and insists on telling him a story. Now, something in mariner's eyes which were glittering, holds the wedding guest transfixed, and the guest sits down and listens as the mariner tells his tale. Now, the mariner begins by saying that his ship left harbor in fine weather. However, a storm soon blew up with strong winds, mist, and snow. Huge emerald green icebergs came floating past the ship, which was soon surrounded by ice. At length, an albatross came flying through the fog. All the mariners, the crew members, greeted the bird in God's name, and it seemed to have brought them good luck, for the ship broke safely through the ice and a favorable wind sprang up. Now, the wedding guest, thinking this is the end of the story, as you'll find out in the closing part of part 1. So, wedding guest thought that I think this is the end of the story. So, he wished congratulations to the ancient mariner. He congratulates the ancient mariner on his lucky escape. But here, you'll find out the significant part. However, the ancient mariner sadly tells the wedding guest that he shot the albatross with his crossbow. This is actually the line which is very significant, and that you will find out in the last stanza of the part. This is actually the plot, the story of part 1 of the poem. Now, you see, when you read this poem, you'll find out that this poem is, written in a very, loose, short ballad stanza form. Let me pick up one pencil and then, yes. It's written in loose, short ballad stanzas. And you'll find out that usually, either 4 or 6 lines long stanzas are there. But, occasionally you'll find out that 9 lines are also there in the stanza. Because generally you have in the poems that some kind of meter is used. So, meter in this poem is quite, loose. Generally, odd lines in the poems are in tetrameter. They are in tetrameter. I hope you. And even lines are in trimeter. If you are not familiar with tetrameter, meter, so there is one video on rhetorics. You can watch that video and you will understand then. Now, coming to the second part of the poem, I have just told you that what happens in the first part of the poem that I have already explained. Coming to this second part. What happens at the end of the first part? That he confesses that I killed the albatross. Look at part 2. Now the sun rose upon the right. Out of the sea came he, still hid in mist, and on the left went down the sea. Now, as the ship sailed towards the north, the sun rose to its right. Again it seemed that the sun appeared out of the sea. As they were still, engulfed in mist, the sun was not very bright and remained covered by the mist. It set and seemed to disappear into the sea on their left. As you'll find out here, that out of the sea came he and then went down the sea. Here again you'll find out here how personification has been used by the poet here. Now, coming to the next stanza, and the good south wind still blew behind. But no sweet bird did follow, nor any day for food or play came to the mariner's hollow. As I told you, this word in first part, that this is an archaic word and the meaning is call. Good south wind was still blowing. The favorable wind from the south is still blew. And that helped them sail. But the difference was, no sweet bird did follow. No bird was there. Albatross is not there. Because albatross was, mariner had killed the albatross. So no bird is following them, nor any day for food or play. As you have already seen in the first part, that albatross was coming for the food and also to join the vespers. Now, just look at next stanza. And I had done a hellish thing, and it would work them woe, for all averred I had killed the bird that made the breeze to blow. Ah, wretch, said they, the bird to slay that made the breeze to blow. It's them. Woe, sorrow, unhappiness. A word said emphatically. Slay, kill. Hellish, wicked. From the word hell. And I had done a hellish thing. Now the mariner confessed that he had committed a sin, a crime, a hellish thing. And I think that has brought a lot of happiness and sorrow to the people, to the mariners. And I had done a hellish thing, and it would work them woe. For all averred, everybody said emphatically, everybody blamed him for killing the holy bird. For all averred, I had killed the bird that made the breeze to blow. All of them blamed me, and they said that the favorable wind blew only because of the bird. And that favorable wind actually helped us for sail. And you had killed that bird. Ah, wretch. Wretch, said they, you are a criminal. You are a criminal. You are a wicked person. Ah, wretch, said they. They said you are a criminal. The bird to slay that made the breeze to blow. The bird which made the breeze to blow, you killed that bird. You are a criminal. Now, You'll find out how here you can say that use of alliteration has been done by the poet. Now, coming to the next stanza, nor dim nor red like God's own head, the glorious sun oppressed, then all averred I had killed the bird that brought the fog and mist. It was right, said they, such birds to slay, that brings the fog and mist. Pressed rose. Slay, I have already told you, kill. Now, as the ship reached a bit, towards the north, the sun shone appropriately. It was, neither dim nor red. It was just like, God's head. It was, it looked perfect, just like the hollow actually surrounding God's head. You can say that's use of similes here. Then all averred, I had killed the bird that brought the fog and mist. Look at the change in opinion. And this is actually, you'll find out how eccentric human beings are. I had killed the bird that brought the fog and mist. It was right, said they. Such birds to slay. They said, oh, you have done a very good work, because that bird bring the fog and mist. Look at the change in approach, in opinion. Because the first stanza, they have said a different thing. That, wretch, they said you are a criminal. Look at this. Wretch, said they, the bird to slay, that made the breeze to blow. You have killed that bird. Oh, you are a criminal. But suddenly, they said that, then all over I had killed the bird that brought the fog and mist. It was right. They say it was right. Change in opinion. The fair breeze blew, the white foam flew, the furrow followed free. You were the first that ever burst into the silent sea. No other stanza can be so beautiful example of alliteration as this stanza is. The fair breeze blew, the white foam flew. Foam is actually the bubbles which are formed on the surface of the sea. And furrow is actually the track formed behind the ship as it sailed ahead. So the fair breeze, as a favorable wind blew, the ship sailed fast. As the ship sailed ahead, it left behind a white colored foam in its path on the surface of the sea. The sea was very quiet, and there was no sign of life. It seemed the sailor's ship was the first to have reached in that part of the world. When this sentence was used, we were the first that ever burst into the silent sea. So, and the next stanza which we will read, they become actually the hyperbolical, sentences. Now, coming to the next stanza. Down dropped the breeze, the sails dropped down. Down, dropped, again archaic word. Dropped. The breeze dropped, and when the breeze dropped, the sails also dropped. It was sad as sad could be. In the first line, you'll find out that all of a sudden, the south wind is stopped, and when the south wind is stopped, the ship also, stopped. And it was sad as sad could be. We're very sad. The crew became sad because they were stranded in the middle of the sea. And we did speak only to break the silence of the sea. There was no sound, no voice, no noise. The only noise that could be heard in the silent sea was that of the crew members talking to each other. I think this is the hyperbolical statement. Now, coming to the next stanza. All in a hot and copper sky, the bloody sun at noon, right above the mast did stand, no bigger than the sun. The weather was very hot, and the sky was full of the copper, color, which was coming from the hot sun. And here, the poet says that the sun was bloody. Why bloody? Because it was thirsty for the sweat and blood of the crew. Once again, the sun was just, right above the mast. It was overhead, which indicates that they were in the equatorial region. And the sun was, as big as the moon. You find out how here, in blood, sun and copper sky, visual imagery has been used by the poet. And in these two lines where the sky is compared with this and sun with this, the poet has used metaphor. Because the sky's color has been indirectly compared to the color of copper, and the sun has been indirectly compared to, blood. So he has used a metaphor, here. Day after day, we stuck nor breath nor motion, as idle as painted ship upon a painted ocean. Look at again a visual imagery which is used here. Day after day, this is repetition. And repetition for emphasis. Day after day, we stuck nor breath nor motion. We're breathless, we are motionless. Because the ship remained stranded there in the middle of the sea. As idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. We are so motionless that it seemed to us that, there is a painted ship and there is a painted ocean. Coming to the next stanza. Water, water everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. There was, water all around the ship. And all the boards did shrink. The wooden planks of the ship shrank due to the dry heat of the sun. The sailors were thirsty as the drinking water had finished. Although there was water all around, they did not have a drop to drink. Now this is the ironical. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop, to drink. In the next stanza, he finds, some creatures in the water. So the very deep did rot. Deep is for ocean. Slimy things you can say ugly or, with slippery bodies like, fish and all that. The very deep did rot, O Christ. O Christ, the ocean is rotting. That ever this should be, will it happen? And I don't want to see. Yes, slimy things did crawl with legs upon the slimy sea. Slippery creatures, ugly creatures are crawling all around the slippery sea. Now this kind of statement, a kind of, statement which is full of hatred. He's hating the creatures, that how ugly creatures are there, and they're crawling in the sea. This is something which is very important because we will find out a different line in some other part of the poem. Because this is actually the crime, the sin which he is again doing, that, he is criticizing, hating the creatures. Because all of them are the, creatures of God. So you have to be very attentive towards these lines, because you're going to compare these lines with the other lines. About in reel and rout, the death fires danced at night, the water like a witch's oils burnt green and blue and white. A reel and rout are actually the types of dances. It seemed as if, the fire of death danced around them, doing various types of dances. The sea water was like the oil of a witch, which is coming, in different shades of green, blue, and white. Now, when a witch's oil comes, we are reminded of, Macbeth. I think this has been taken from Shakespeare's play Macbeth, in which the witch burned magical oil which emitted, different colors. Death fires can be the example of, personification. Coming to the next stanza. And some in dreams assured were of the spirit that plagued us so. 9 fathom deep he had followed us from the land of mist and snow. Somebody saw a dream. And some in dreams assured were the spirit that plagued means cursed. Somebody saw the dream, and the dream, it was said that the spirit, this is the spirit of, or you can say the soul of, dead albatross. That it is only because of albatross that all these things are happening. It has cursed us. And 9 fathom deep he had followed us from the land of mist and snow. And let me tell you that it had followed them at a distance of 9 fathoms under the sea, and had been chasing them from the land of snow and mist, where it had been shot dead by the sailor. Ancient says that one of my manners saw the dream, and in the dream he must have seen that it is actually the soul of the albatross which is chasing us, and it is only because of that we are suffering. Now coming to the next stanza. And every tongue through utter drought was withered at the root. We could not speak no more than if we had been choked with soot. Soot is actually smoke. Every tongue through utter drought, withered, dry, parched. Every tongue was dry because we were not able to take the water. The tongues of all crew members had, dried till the end due to the prolonged thirst. They were not able to speak, and the throats were dry as if, they were full of dry smoke. And that was a kind, they were feeling suffocation, because no water was there, and the throat was not, wet. Next. Ah, well a day! What evil looks had I from old and young. Now, all the crew members of the ship, old and young, they cast evil look on the mariner, harsh look on the mariner. Because all of them were thinking that it is because of this ancient mariner we are suffering. They were suffering due to the curse bestowed upon them by the holy soul of the albatross. And this, you just see that instead of the cross, the albatross about my neck was hung. In order to punish the seller for the sin committed by him, the cross was removed, and instead, the dead albatross was hung around the neck. It would remind him time and again of the grave sin committed by him. And here, ends the second part of the poem. Now, what happens in the third part, I'm not taking it line by line, but I'm telling you some, important points which happen there in other parts. In part 3, Mariner says that we had the very time. With the very time. It was very time for the sailors. Now what happens that when they saw westward, the ancient mariner finally saw something on the horizon. No bigger than the speck. No bigger than the speck spot. Now, he wanted to tell to the mariners that something is there, but he was not able to speak because his throat was quite dry. Then what did he do? He bit his arm and sucked out the blood to enable him to cry that he had seen a sail. The ship stopped, tacking and headed towards, them. The ship was sailing in front of the setting sun. The mariner realized that he could see the sun through the ship as though it were a skeleton. The sails were like, spider's webs. And there were only two sailors. One was death and the other was life in death. They were the two, sailors. Death was a skeleton. It was a skeleton. While life in death was a terrifying figure of a woman. Terrifying figure of a woman. With red lips. Golden hair. And his skin. And the skin was, the line which is used was, as white as leprosy. So this was actually the condition there. The two were, playing. Two means these, death and life and death. Two were playing dice. As the ghostly ship came alongside them, and life and death won the life of the ancient mariner, while death claimed the other sailors. As the ancient mariner was there, other mariners were there. So death claimed the rest of the mariners, and life and death won the life of, the ancient mariner, because they were playing this, game. As night fell, the mysterious ship sailed away. Suddenly, everyone in the mariner's ship began to die. There were 200 of them. And all of their souls flew from their bodies. Just as the arrow had flown from the mariner's crossbow to kill the albatross. So here in part 3, we'll find out that how death, in the game of dice, life and death wins the ancient mariner, and death wins all the mariners. And you'll find out how the soul flies from the bodies of these mariners. They were, around, 200. Let us now come to the third part of, the fourth part of the poem. Now, In fourth part of the poem, the wedding guest, interrupts the ancient manner, because we have from time to time the appearance of the wedding guest. He interrupts the ancient manner, expressing fear that are you an unearthly person? Unearthly person. I think you are a ghost. The mariner reassures him that he continues. He said that only I was left. I did not die. Otherwise, the other people, my mariners, they died. He stayed alone on the ship after everyone else was dead. He did not know where to turn his eyes. All he could see was, the putrid sea, the rotten sea, and the corpses, dead bodies, which were rotting on the sea because all of them died. He tried to pray. Now, this word is very significant because here lies the significance of the poem. He tried to pray, but, his heart turned dry as dust when he did so. He was oppressed by the presence of the dead men, who still looked at him as, sorrowfully as they had when alive. The mariner saw that the curse in their eyes for 7 days and nights. Yet he could not die, for he had been claimed by, as I told you, life in death. By moonlight, the mariner watched the water around him burning red and saw water snakes, blue, green, and black, flashing with golden fire. The mariner was struck by the beauty of these living things, unconsciously loved and blessed him. And this is something which is very significant, as I told you in part 2, that he hated all the creatures, slimy creatures in the slimy, sea. But here, he was attracted by the beauty of these, creatures. In part 4. So the lines of part 2 and part 4, you can compare. The moment he did so, he was able to pray. He was not able to pray because he was hating the other creatures. The moment he realized that the beauty is there in these creatures, he was able to pray. And when he was able to pray, the albatross fell from the mariner's neck, which was being hung by the other mariners, and sank into the sea. Here ends part 5 of the poem. Now, coming to next part, part 5. Part 5. Part 5. Now the mariner was finally able to sleep because, he prayed. He is now, doing repentance, which is very, as I told you, it's a very important theme. When he awoke, it was raining and he could drink the water. His body felt so light that he almost thought that he had died in his sleep and was now a blessed ghost. He saw stars and flashes of fire, the moon and dark clouds. The wind roared loudly. It never, reached the ship. Now the dead men on the deck groaned and arose, and then began to work and sail the ship in silence. The wedding guest again says that he is afraid, but the mariner reassures him that these dead bodies were possessed not by the spirits of the dead sailors, but by angels. He knows this because at dawn the angels sang and left the sailors' bodies. The ship sailed on without a breeze, guided by his spirit. It then stopped and suddenly bounded off like a pawing horse. In his stupor, the mariner heard two voices. One asked, if this was the man who cruelly shot the albatross. Because I told you that two voices, they are also the characters. When the first one asked that, is this the man who cruelly shot the albatross? The other replied with a softer voice that the mariner has done his penance. He has done it, though he shot the albatross, but he has done his penance, he has done his repentance. And he would still do more. And here, ends the part 5 of the poem. Now, coming to next part, that is part 6. You see, the mariner, describes, coming to part 6, the mariner describes the dialogue between two voices. As I told you, the first voice and the second voice. They said that the ship was sailing fast, but would be slow when the mariner awoke from his trance. The mariner did wake sometimes in the night, and he was again disturbed by the stony eyes of the corpses on the deck. He could not forget their curse, or look away from them or pray. A wind sprang up, and the ship sailed swiftly. The mariner was delighted to see his own country. Again, that lighthouse, hill, and church, kirk, okay, he recognized. When he turned away to look at the deck, he saw an angel standing on the corpse of each of the dead sailors, emitting light. The mariner then heard the sound of oars and saw a boat in which a pilot had come to guide him. I told you the pilot is again a character. With the pilot was a hermit. Hermit is also a character. And the mariner immediately thought that this holy man would be able to absolve him of his sin. So this, to get absolved is also very important. Absolution, to forgive, to pardon. Now, what happens in part 7? Let us now see what happens in part 7 of the poem. Something which is very significant, and here lies the crux of the poem. Whatever you have been studying so far, you'll find out in the last part, part 7. The mariner describes the hermit, a good and pious man who enjoys, talking to sailors. As the pilot's boat came alongside the ship suddenly sank with a terrible commotion. The mariner lay floating on the surface, and he soon found himself in the rowboat. He grabbed the oars and rowed until they reached the shore. As soon as they were on dry land, the mariner begged the hermit for absolution from his sins. That, please pardon me. He told his tale to the hermit, and though the mariner experienced agony as he spoke, telling the tale left him free. The agony, however, still returns from time to time. And then the mariner must tell his tale as he has done to the wedding guest. The mariner says that certain faces impel him to tell the story. It eases his soul to pray in church, surrounded by others praying. His parting message to the wedding guest is, and these, I think, lines are very, significant, which I am going to tell you. The lines which he tells, I think they are the main, this is actually the main theme of the poem. And when he listens to those lines, that man, that is the wedding guest, is stunned by, mariner's revelations and rises the next day both sadder and wiser. But what are those lines? Those lines, are very significant in the sense that they form the theme of the poem. And I told you the theme of the poem is, repentance. The theme of the poem is, prayer. Two stanzas which are very significant, and you can quote, and I think they are very significant and they form the basic theme of the poem. What basically Mariner tells to the wedding guest, the first stanza is there: farewell, farewell, but this I tell to thee, thou wedding guest. And then the line comes, he prayeth well, who loveth well, both man and bird and beast. This is the stanza. Let me tell you, and this is my message, that his is the best prayer, who loves all things. And all things means man, bird, and beast. You hated those creatures, slimy creatures. When you prayed, then everything, becomes all right. Then the next stanza is there. We have the repetition of the third line. This, he prayeth well, who loveth well. In the next stanza, this line is repeated. The first line is there. He prayeth well, who loveth well. And then the line is, all things, both great and small. All things, both great and small. Why? Why should you love everything great and small? Third line is there. For the dear God who loveth us, he made and loveth all. So these are the two stanzas which are very significant. And I told you that this poem actually is based on sin and penance and also the power of prayer. It deals with the son of the ancient mariner shooting the albatross, as well as the suffering he has to endure in order to atone for this sin. Even at the end of the poem, the ancient mariner seems to be in the midst of his penance. He is doomed to wander the world and narrate this story to each and every person, whomsoever he finds. The power of the prayer has also been expressed here in this poem. The ability to pray is an indication of the state of the mariner's mind and soul, and how dire his situation is at any given point in the poem. You just see that he was suffering a lot, but when he started praying, when his heart became milder, then he was able to repent, and ultimately everything became all right. So this was all about the poem which I wanted to tell you. But if you want to understand the entire poem, try to read, try to watch both the videos, and then I think you'll be able to understand it properly. Thank you very much.